the grief that had taken me inward and made me realize what is this trap that I'm stuck in. I'm just being commodified and sexualized, and I'm not sure whether this is the path that really gives me joy. And I will never shy from saying this, but the first time I felt respected and valued on a film set was when I worked for BBC.
How's that?
And I'd worked with the biggest producers and some of the biggest, acting teams, actors, everything. I remember when I finally decided that I would make my separation public, how terrified I was. Because, I mean, the kind of judgment that comes with news like this is extraordinary. And everyone was terrified for me, my friends, my family, my agents. And I remember thinking to myself that you can handle this, you've handled worse. We're shooting in Rajasthan with my character speaking Bhojpuri, and my lines are being given to me minutes before I have to go on set to shoot. My clothes are getting stitched on the fly and they're just like kind of arriving. So there's like no, अच्छा क्या पहनती है? चनिया चोली. And I'm like, क्यों? तुम सवाल बड़े करती हो यार, तुम सवाल मत किया करो. When I started out as an actor, there was a lot of comparison with former beauty queens, especially Aishwarya Rai. You don't have to be light-eyed and light-skinned to be perceived as beautiful. You can be yourself entirely and still be beautiful.
Hello everybody, I'm Rudrani and welcome to Wonder Women. She is definitely a Wonder Woman. She's made her space, broken norms, broken stereotypes, and always been herself. I'm talking about the beautiful, beautiful inside out, Pia Mirza. Thank you for joining in.
You're the sweetest. Thank you
Also
for having
truthful.
me. Yes, you are.
I am. I have to say that. But you know, I keep harping on this fact that you've been authentic because the industry in the world that we're in doesn't really allow us and doesn't really celebrate authenticity all the time. You know, they're always trying to put particularly female actors in this box of their own.
A mold.
A mold. Even in the way they look, a certain type you have to look.
But that's society in general.
Yeah.
I guess it's even more so in our industry.
Yeah. But you've always, from the beginning, tried to fight against that tide. If I take you back to that lane, tell me how tough it was back then to do it comparatively.
So honestly, I think when I started out as an actor, there was a lot of comparison with former beauty queens, especially Aishwarya Rai. Of course, it was a huge compliment. I was young and starting out. I was all of 19, and I took it as a compliment and took it in my stride. Having said that, it was a very dangerous trend, and because what was happening was there was some kind of an expectation for me to be as refined as she was, or not even that. I think it was just a box that I was put in that kind of had to match a certain standard that they had set, right? Which was, of course, her infinite beauty. But I want to take away something important that I learned from that, which was you don't have to be light-eyed and light-skinned to be perceived as beautiful. You can be yourself entirely and still be beautiful. And I'll tell you why I mentioned the light eyes as well. Specifically because I remember in the first 3, maybe 4 years of my acting career, I was wearing light colored lenses in every film. I mean, so much so that in one film there would be like multiple lens changes. And it's a ridiculous thing because I think I was desperately trying to conform to some crazy idea of beauty, and also because I was not comfortable with who I was despite having won an international beauty title. So it's a little bizarre, that the dichotomy of that situation. And I think when I did a film, it was a very unique film. It was a film called Praan Jaye par Shaan na Jaye, that Sanjay Manjrekar had produced, and a wonderful director had directed us in it. And even in that film, where I am playing a character who is perceived as not beautiful by the society, I remember them darkening my skin for the part, the color of my eyes being brown as they are, and me having to wear, so when the transition happens, or her so-called transformation happens into the swan from the duckling, what was the transition? I see those shots today and I cringe, and I'm like, oh my god, this is just so wrong. I'm wearing these light grey lenses, and
Fairer.
yeah, the color of the skin has changed. So I think there's a lot there that was really messed up, and I don't think I had the maturity or the understanding to see how wrong any of that was at that time. It was only much later that I said, wait a minute, who am I again? What is my authentic voice? So can the first thing that I discard and never use again be a colored lens, unless the part genuinely demands it, and I'm not doing it to validate some form of beauty that somebody else has set a standard for. And I think that happened about 6 to 8 years into my career. So 25 years में से 8 साल, I think पहले 7-8 साल आप negate ही कर दो. It took that much time to just understand and be able to vocalize and stand by and or for something.
I was going back and reading up on you. I realized that a lot of people always talk about your beauty so much. It's ironical because they even criticized that beauty then. They said you were so beautiful, but then some people will come and tell you, oh, but if it was this much, then maybe it would have been even more. That's so ironical for me. Someone like you who's absolutely gorgeous, and I look beyond your physical beauty also, had to still face that criticism. Which, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we've laughed about how in my first film I was called all kinds of things.
Yeah, for the ones who don't know, maybe you should tell them, like, it's
Well,
ridiculous.
you know, journalism and film journalism for the first decade of my career, maybe a little longer, was toxic. And there's no other way to describe it. It's still better now, and I feel like there is more than enough room and space to have conversations with decent people who, you know, have genuine interest in storytelling and cinema and your craft, and are not really only interested in creating clickbait material where they're like just, you know, painting you with a very bad brush, or they're using language that demeans you and disrespects you. But starting out, I mean, we would have like a regular onslaught on our dignity, on our appearance, on everything. And
a lot of slut shaming.
a lot of that, body shaming, slut shaming, you name it. There's hundreds of things. In fact, I've just been spending a little time at home, and I was going through some archival articles and reading certain, you used to get those small snippets where this very toxic auntie would be telling people gossip, and the descriptions in those articles is horrifying.
So sad.
Yeah, but it existed and it thrived, and people devoured it.
Yeah, encouraged it.
And encouraged it. So there's something wrong with everybody about letting something like that happen.
How did you deal with it when you were amidst that storm?
Oh,
Abhi to,
I
of
was
course,
a
you can
kid.
detach.
I was a
Yeah,
kid.
it must be so heartbreaking.
It was so hard to understand, to even kind of make sense of. I remember Bhatt Saab once, actually. I was shooting a film called Tumsa Nahi Dekha, and I was desperately unhappy about this regular onslaught on me in the media, and it was regularly like just linking me up with random people, or making snide, rude, disrespectful, demeaning remarks. And but I would say, I mean, with all due respect, it's the newspaper. It's, people will read it today, tomorrow it will be somebody's toilet paper. And the only person this kind of stuff will stick with will be you. because you are the protagonist in the story, in your head. So why don't you remove yourself from the protagonist's position and look at it from a third person's perspective? It's so evident that it's trash. It belongs in the trash. So don't let it upset you. You know your truth, and that's all that matters. And that kind of really stuck in my head. And I said, okay, this makes absolute sense. This is the only way I can be a duck and let that water just ride off my back and not allow this to, ruffle me.
Deep dive into a time when you started was during modeling and of course around the time your year was so monumental because all three of you were absolute queens in your own right, with or without the crown that you won for us. Three individual personalities, Lara, you, Priyanka. But also after that, what happened was just the pitting against each other, saying who is better than the other. In fact, I know that Lara and you were actually roommates, when you were struggling at the time to make films.
Yeah, we shared bye-bye noodles. When
Right?
we had no money.
I need to know a little more on that for the ones who don't know. I just know a little, but maybe you can. And how do you look back at that conversation today? We are at a time when we know women are not buying that game of, being pitted against each other, but it still goes on at some level.
Oh, at every level, right? That's another thing that patriarchy thrives on.
Yeah.
No, I think it was just another byproduct of what sells, write the news that sells and create the noise that kind of gets heard. So my film journey started a little before Priyanka's and Lara's because I dived right into it. They gave themselves a little time. And by the time they came together in Andaz, which was a massive hit, and I had like 3 back-to-back flops between Rehna Tere Dil Mein, Deewanapan and Tumko Na Bhul Payenge, which were touted as really big films but just didn't work at the box office. It was hard because naturally there was a lot of comparison. But Rudrani, I think 5-6 years into our careers, we kind of, each of us found our own, space. And I'm sure there were those who wanted to compare, continued to compare for a very, very long time, until we reached a point where our individual voices became so distinct and so strong that the comparisons had to stop. And that's wonderful because I think, to look back at a time where we all had this shared, unique, incredible experience from coming from, different cities in the country, learning to navigate, living on our own in Mumbai. Priyanka still had some support from her parents, but Lara and I didn't, and we were kind of, she was already living here because she was modeling, and she had opened her home and her heart to me, and I shared an apartment the size of a matchbox with her, and I remember helping her pack for her Miss Universe and going away, and there's so much fondness and so much love and so much respect that I don't think any of us ever used any of that to take away from how we felt for each other. Priyanka was just doing extraordinarily well, almost from get-go. So she had other battles to fight and deal with. And she continued to, and some of those just intensified with time. But she was doing really well. And so one only had awe and respect for that, You kind of looked at it and said, what incredible confidence. I remember thinking to myself, my God, if I was half the actor she is, how much further I would be able to go. So I spent more time honing my skills, understanding what my drawbacks were, understanding how I could be a better artist. It kind of worked both ways.
You mentioned
it inspired some solid work.
No, of course.
To say the least.
No, of course. You said Lara and you shared Viva noodles. I'm sorry, but sometimes when you go back to those moments where
पैसे नहीं थे यार.
Yeah, वही मैं कह रही हूँ. It also shapes you as a human being. Yeah, the value for money, the value to become more independent, all of that.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
There is nothing more empowering than financial independence for a woman, and we were all starting out. We had some reserves in our bank which we kind of had saved up Lara and I had modeled and saved up that money. Neither of us used any money from our parents to do anything, not for our portfolios, not for the time that we spent training for the Femina Miss India, for none of it. And I know these details because we shared space. I know that even in Priyanka's, situation, it's not like she was coming from. She had solid support, and her parents were very involved. Especially her brother and her mother were very involved. But with us, there was just, we had what we had earned and what we'd saved. And there'd be days when our savings would run out and payments would be due and they wouldn't come. And we'd be sitting in these expensive gowns and coming back from like these really fancy events where we'd posed with like the most expensive champagne. Like Dom Perignon bottles. Again, I'm naming a brand I shouldn't be, but she's posing with these really expensive bottles of champagne and coming back home to having to choose why because that's all we could afford.
Yeah, of course, because that's what, right?
But that's really the fun of it and the beauty of it and the irony of all of it. We would both laugh hysterically. We'd be like, just look at us. भाड़े के कपड़े
कितने ग्लैमरस events.
कितने ग्लैमरस इवेंट्स हम कितने ग्लैमरस लग रहे हैं लेकिन बैग पे पैसे नहीं है.
But it's very interesting you said that the first 5-6 years was you finding yourself, because you also, this was very new to you.
Yeah, and we were kids. I mean, I was a kid. I was 19.
But you continued doing what you could, you know. When was that point where you wanted to take a seat back in your career? I know others have said maybe this point. I want to know exactly when you felt that it was that point where you saw yourself a little differently and said that, I'm going to take a step back and look at how I want to take this forward.
So I'd done Parinita and I'd done Lage Raho Munna Bhai, and I'd done both these films at a time when all the big mainstream commercial film offers had stopped coming, and I'd basically gone and had this meeting with Vidhu Vinod Chopra. He was actually the only filmmaker who I went and met at the time and expressed the deepest, respect and desire to work with him. And I said, if there's anything that I can be a part of that you are doing, please let me know. It doesn't matter whether it's the lead or it's not. I just want to be a part of aesthetic, sensitive, good filmmaking. And credit to him, he spent time with me, he chatted with me, got to know me better. And when he was making Parinita with Pradeep Sarkar, he called me and offered me the part of Gayatri Tantya, which is, the woman that Saif is supposed to marry in the film. And it was not the lead, but it was a special appearance, and I was like, I have to do this. This is because I feel like such a misfit on most of the jobs that I'm on right now, and I'm so uncomfortable and unhappy with what I'm doing, because I was able to articulate this better much later, but at the time all I knew was that I just felt unhappy and I felt uncomfortable.
With the parts that were being offered
with
also?
the parts, the stories, with the kind of, with the approach to storytelling. It just was very unsettling. The hours were very long. There was no time given for preparation. Lines and dialogues would be offered to us literally minutes before we had to go in and film a scene. And I know that the past generations had kind of navigated that and like figured it out, but I was not able to. It was just disconcerting. And when I worked with Vidhu Vinod Chopra, and we got time to do readings together, we read the scenes, we did look tests, we did a workshop, we shot the film, and it was an aha moment for me, Rani, because I felt like, oh my God, there's method in the madness. And more than anything else, I realized, oh my God, you can be respected on a film set as a woman. And I will never shy from saying this, but the first time I felt respected and valued on a film set was when I worked for VVC.
Before that,
it had never happened.
How sad.
And I'd worked with the biggest producers and some of the biggest, acting teams,
actors,
everything. And co-actors are very different. It's like I don't think anybody, women are always treated with a lot of love and they're very special on a set. But, there's no respect for your time, there's no respect for many things that the men are respected far more for. And it's just like nomenclature. It's something that they do, no questions asked. And then we did Lage Raho Munna Bhai together and I was like, yaar, ye to kamal hai. इतनी खुशी हो सकती है लोगों के साथ काम करके. I can feel so much peace and joy and love. And after I worked with Raju Irani, I was like, yaar, this is just too special. And that's when I took a back seat and I said, you know what? I am going to spend time just living a little. I'm going to work less. I want to step back, take 1 or 2 years off if I have to, completely. Just do lots of workshops. So I enlisted myself with Barry John and I spent lots of time with him. Saurabh, who now is an acting coach himself, was a part of Barry's team at the time, and we did workshops together. And I brought some of my favorite people together to come in on the workshop. So I had Konkona, and there was like just a mixed group of people, Ankur and Shabana, and there was Jackie Bhagnani also at the time, just a whole bunch of us. And at just about that time, I'd also lost my adoptive father, and I think it's a combination of many things. So kind of the grief that had taken me inward and made me realize, what is this trap that I'm stuck in? I'm just being commodified and sexualized, and I'm not sure whether this is the path that really gives me joy. I want to be a part of storytelling that has substance, that मैं दिल में शबाना आज़मी और स्मिता पाटिल हूँ. You understand?
I know.
I want to be a part of cinema.
Yeah.
And I was
but you see that when you see the work you've chosen, now, recently.
But it took pausing, stepping back, literally saying no to every leading part that came my way, or sitting home without feeling desperately lost, being completely okay with the phone not ringing at all. Because once you start saying no, the calls just dry up, they don't come.
Just to give you a fair idea of the kind of roles that might have been given to women who are trying to do interesting work, I'm going to ask Diya to tell what kind of roles you're being offered, how it was being pitched. No, because I need to understand, abhi to shift hai, but it was quite the shift from what I hear.
Oh yeah, it was a very different industry. So firstly, we rarely had bound scripts. A story, one line would be narrated to you, or just like your character would be, you would get a character brief, and then you would be expected to say yes because you had 4 songs in the film and you were working with alongside a superstar, and the producer was big, and that was supposed to be enough. And like I said, like the scenes, the dialogues would be given to you minutes before you had to perform a scene. So there was no time to live with the script, to kind of define your arc. There would be no, we would rarely shoot chronologically. Mostly things would be shot based on
haphazard, random.
Date availability of your male co-stars, and or location, availability. But that happens even now. Although that's simpler to navigate when you know the story, or you have the full screenplay, a draft of the screenplay. यहाँ पे तो कुछ पता नहीं था. You just go in blind.
लड़की है, ऐसे sweet लड़की है, ऐसे type कुछ brief होता होगा.
मतलब कपड़े क्या पहनोगे? कब कुछ पहना देंगे वो भूज. अच्छा तो मैं let me give you the example of तुमको ना बोल पाएंगे, right? Who's the director? Pankaj Parashar. And you're like, okay, wow, he's done Chalbaz and he's like amazing. Great. Then the hero is Salman Khan. And then there's these established producers, they're amazing. And they kind of spend lavish amounts of money on making everything accessible for the story, but script is not available. There are no workshops, there's no readings. Scenes are being written in Bhojpuri, like the dialogue that I'm supposed to speak. So we're shooting in Rajasthan, but my character is speaking Bhojpuri, and my lines are being given to me minutes before I have to go on set to shoot. My clothes are getting stitched on the fly, and they're just like kind of arriving. So there's like no, अच्छा क्या पहनती है चनिया चोली, and I'm like क्यों?
क्या हर भोजपुरी भी इंसान चनिया चोली में
तुम सवाल बड़े करती हो यार, तुम सवाल मत किया करो, तुमको जो दिया जा रहा है वो चुपचाप कर लो. तो yeah.
God, and you survived those times. But you know what? But
They were fun. They had, I mean, like, for,
now
for whatever it's worth, even that was fun.
Sure.
It had its own madness to it. But the point is, I think what really stifled me was that complete disregard for a woman's space, for her question, to be able to answer her questions, to give her allow her this of the benefit of knowing better so she could do better.
Yeah. Just, and then I think a lot of times you talk about the safety of women on sets as well, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how that was during the time.
I mean, I felt extremely safe on every set that I worked on, and I especially on, like, I remember Salman's set, because he was such a big star, and there were obviously many of the times when we were shooting outdoors, there'd be like big crowds, and he was extremely protective. And I will never forget instances where, you know, like they would have to get him into a car and make him take off, and he would always look out for me. He would always make sure that I'm the first one being put into the car, that, you know, the security was not just focused on making sure I was okay. So no, interestingly and thankfully, I didn't have any of those issues, but I'm extremely well aware that if I hadn't been an international beauty title holder, and I didn't come with the media backing that I had, and I was like, we were household names, right? When we came into films, we were well known and we were spoken to regularly. So I think maybe that may have been some form of a deterrent, and we were treated, we were safe. But I didn't feel safe for a very, very, very long time. I would always have my hairdresser share the room with me, because I didn't want any unexpected knocks on my door. But I know my colleagues would get those knocks. And
how do you navigate through that? I'm sure if you're in a situation like that, you're so young, first of all. I want to reiterate that, right? Like today, it's I don't know, that with age, I think,
I've heard that when you're 28 by the time your brain is fully developed. So you're just navigating life till you're 28.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's scary.
And then you have powerful people asking you uncomfortable questions, and you know how it's strange and it's difficult to navigate through it, I feel.
I think when your values are clear to you, and you know what makes you you know what makes you uncomfortable for sure, and you're not willing to put yourself consciously through that discomfort for anything, then you kind of make that, you know,
like your shield.
Yeah, your shield, and becomes very visible to everyone around you, so they don't mess with that.
And then comes a time when you as a woman decide to figure out what you want to do with your personal life, and you want to get married. And there are so many assumptions as to what's going to happen to her career, which is not a discussion usually with the other actors, male actors, when they want to get married. A lot of women in the industry have been put in the same situation. Could you explain to me that situation for you? That shift.
I actually want to share. So Rudrani, when I took those 2 years off and I spent that time doing the workshops, I started working with NGOs. I started working with the Sanctuary Nature Foundation. I discovered Wildlife Trust of India. I started going into the forests of India. I started working on something that really completed and kind of gave me my why.
Yeah.
And that purpose became very defined to me and clear. And that is when the shift really happened. Before I even considered getting married, I had the audacity to say I want to produce films.
Yeah, that.
And at that time, a lot of my female colleagues, a lot of my friends said, big mistake, don't do it. Firstly, it's very hard work. Secondly, it's not a place for women at all. It's completely like there's money involved. There's all kinds of people involved. It's all about, managing egos. And I was like, what else are we doing as women? Constantly managing egos.
Yeah, of course.
So how different is that from being a producer?
That's true.
But then the other thing that they were worried about was, अगर तू producer बन जाएगी तो तेरे को acting का काम कौन देगा? Because if you become a producer, then they're saying, oh, अब तो वो producer है, उसको act.
क्या ज़रूरत?
And interestingly, that actually even happened for a short while, because they were like, but now she'll make her own films. She doesn't need to be, hired for a job.
Yeah.
But it was really my desire and my ambition as an artist to be able to create a safe space where everyone felt respected and equal. That's actually what pushed me into production. And I'd worked with Vinod and Raju, and I was like, wow, this is how it can be done. And then I'd worked with Excel, with Rima and Zoya on Honeymoon Travels Private Limited. And it was that experience of working on all these films at the time that encouraged me to believe that if I really wanted to create value in the workplace, I needed to perhaps create it myself.
Yeah.
So that's what gave birth to the production company. Yeah.
While you were navigating through all those opinions.
And I did. I went through the whole grind of mortgaging my home to make a film. In our first film, I cast myself, but in the second film we made, I cast Vidya Balan. So when we made Bobby Jasus, that was like, it was a terrifying experience, but the most gratifying experience, because at the end of that film, I was like, hell yeah, we can do this. You know, we can do it against all odds. We can still go out there and tell the story we really want to tell. And eventually, at some time in life, people will look at it and will continue to look at it and say, "Arey wah, kitni pyari baat gayi." At our time, there was nothing. You had to kind of take money from the market, and you either took it on interest or you took a bank loan. And if you took a bank loan, you mortgaged your home.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah.
And then you made a film, and then you prayed that a studio would buy it, an exhibitor would pick it up, or your music would sell, and collectively you'd be able to recover the money that you kind of made the film for, and then some, if you were lucky.
As much as I hate the term shelf life, but it
was people's favorite word when we were growing up.
I used to read articles. I'm like, wow. It used to be very, very sad. It still is. But it's
but
like,
there is no such thing as a shelf life.
Yeah.
Because
you are an example here. You fought against that entire mindset.
The shelf life is only for those who are selling youth.
True.
And I think ageism has been called out, and how. And people are discovering that women are sexy and beautiful and attractive past their perceived so-called prime, which was supposed to be below the age of 30. So and I feel like this is the collective work of many women. Many of them are my predecessors, many of them are my contemporaries who've shattered these stereotypes and said, hey, you know what, I can be 40 and sexy, I can be 50 and sexier, and I can be in my 60s and be like the hottest woman to walk into any room. There was a generation of artists, of female artists, who completely withdrew from cinema when they got married and had children. And they were stunning, and they were the prime and the peak of their career. Case in point, women like Madhuri, Sridevi also kind of stepped back when she got married and she had her daughters. Meenakshi Sheshadri. There were lots of women who did that at the time, and that was entirely their choice.
Sure.
But I think what that did was it kind of gave the impression to the audiences and producers alike that once women are married, they don't continue to work,
They don't want to or whatever.
and the audiences don't find them appealing. When we had incredible examples in, whether it was again actresses like Sharmila Tagore or Nutan or Madhubala or even like Shabana Azmi, Smita Patil, they were married women who continued working, and Sharmila Tagore though was continued working even after she had children, and she was doing some of the coolest work of her career. So thankfully, I think the next generation changed that. Anushka, Alia. Look at the choices these women have made by marrying when they've chosen to marry whenever they were ready to get married.
Yeah.
They didn't allow the market
The
to
cutoff.
dictate when the right time for them would be to marry. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that they continue to work and flourish.
There's one thing I learned from you is the ability to stand up for yourself, but in the most polite way. They are disrespectful to you, but I have not seen you be disrespectful to another human being. Even if they are saying something really problematic, you put your point across. You've been doing it for a while and you continue to do it. I don't know how you do it sometimes.
I think grace is...
I don't see grace in others. It's very, very less. And how did you become this person from the confidence that you have today and the ability to call out, stand up for yourself with so much grace, Diya? Must have been quite a journey for sure. But
So, I remember when I finally decided that I would make my separation public, how terrified I was. Because, the kind of judgment that comes with news like this is extraordinary. And everyone was terrified for me, my friends, my family, my agents. And I remember thinking to myself that you can handle this, you handled worse. And reminding myself, why have I handled worse? And I remembered because people treat you how you treat yourself. And people perceive you the way you perceive yourself.
so true.
And I've always known my truth. And I've never allowed anyone, neither their insecurity or their animosity or their jealousy or their disrespect, to demean me or assault my dignity. And if there has been an instance when such a thing has happened, I remember when this whole terrible tamasha was going on about, names being taken by the narcotics department in the media, and I saw my name on that list and I was horrified.
Yeah.
And I was the only actor who issued a statement,
Yeah.
a legal notice and a statement. I said, don't you dare drag me into this, because I refuse to allow you to assault my reputation. And so if at any given instance it's a matter of, reputation that discredits you and takes away from the good work you're trying to do, which is creating social impact, it's only in those instances that I felt the need to respond. Otherwise, it's pointless.
So wonderfully put.
If it is a matter of law and somebody is saying that I'm breaking the law, then I'm going to stand up for myself and oppose it vehemently.
There's an assumption that women who are softer, graceful, are easy to break. You exactly know what I'm saying.
How mistaken they are.
Isn't it? A lot of women are like that, right? You're feminine, you're soft. Sometimes either you're too strong or you're just
Yeah.
too feminine. You can't win anyway. But there's always this perception. You're always among the few people who come to my mind.
I think power again comes from just your own self-belief. You need to have that strength, that conviction. And I really feel that comes from engaging with reality. I feel like as actors, we can be extremely insulated. We can live very detached lives from reality, and that can make us delusional, and also kind of very egoistic. And we kind of then see the whole world from, central character.
Yeah, of course.
And you have to realize very quickly that you're not the main character
Can't
in
always.
everything.
Yeah.
You have to learn to kind of step outside of your own head and be able to see the world.
हाँ, थोड़ा narcissism के beyond जाना पड़ेगा.
Yeah.
But interestingly, like you said, UNDP, there are so many other organizations you work with, and your voice is so important in this conversation that we have about environment, pollution, what is happening to our society. Otherwise, people will always still nitpick. I know you're among the very few actors who literally have their entire life like following sustainability rules. It's very difficult to do it. I know you will say not very difficult, but अभी brand ज़्यादा आ रहा है, but it's difficult, yeah, and you do it. Yet they will pull out some random video of yours saying यहाँ पे तो तुमने ये किया था. I find that just
That's fine, Rudrani, because frankly, nobody is perfect. Neither am I. I'm not
Sure.
claiming to be. I've always said this, that, a planet where 8 billion people are imperfectly sustainable will do a lot more good to healing our planet than 8 people being perfectly sustainable.
so true.
Right, so there are many gaps, I'm sure, and there's a lot that I'm learning. But what are the things that I can definitely do and do immediately is what one is constantly considering in their own life. And can I consume less? Can I waste less? Can I make more conscious choices with the labels that I wear or the labels that I spotlight? Can I ensure that all the garments that I ever spotlight on my social media pages are only sustainable? Can I ensure I'm segregating my waste at home? Can I make sure I'm composting? I mean, if my car, which is 11 years old, is so problematic to everyone, I'm like, you know what? I've done several rounds of conversations with the experts, and I've tried to understand what would actually be the most sustainable choice. And the answer that I've received so far is to continue using what I have until such time that it can't be used anymore. Because the carbon footprint of constantly changing is far higher than repairing and reusing and extending the lifespan of something that you're already using. And the point is that yes, it's a diesel engine, and ideally I would like to drive an electric, and I will get there when this one
Gives up.
Completely. Or I can get, give it up in a way where I know that,
Absolutely.
the next steps are the best steps. Whenever you bring up air pollution, the first thing that the troll army unleashes on you is you drive a diesel car. Achha, but does that mean that takes away the right for us to breathe clean air? And maybe there are other ways that one is contributing towards reducing
Waste.
the pollution that you're creating. But I think that this whataboutery is a very political thing, and it's really been started by the politics of our country and the nature of politics in our country, which has really become very toxic. Nobody can speak about a problem or solve a problem or address a problem without being negative or vile or vicious. I mean, grace though has left us completely. I'm talking about, just mainstream communication. And I feel like even individuals have started adopting that manner of speaking, and you're like, what happened to you? You were okay 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But it's okay. You can't, again, I can't sit and give people a parcha of all that I do.
I want to. You know what I'm saying?
I will just have to keep doing what I have to do.
Rightfully so.
And do my best.
Yeah, and honestly, you don't need to defend anything.
Yeah.
People who are
Least of all my choices.
100% also
Because they're my own. But what is public? What is for everyone should be safe,
100%.
should be healthy. And then when we are all within our rights to question that, as we should.
No, 100%. The cutest thing here is that Richa had told me how you have helped her with all your baby products.
She's amazing though.
She told me that, she was like, I was very concerned about
I was
that.
so happy to
She
give
said you made her
all
life
of-
easier.
No, but Rudrani, I was happy to pass on all of the things that we used with Ayaan, because so many things remain pretty much brand new.
Yeah.
Because babies outgrow things very fast.
Yes, of course.
And it used to break my heart because we were bringing like the cleanest, the most chemical free, the most sustainable, the most organic, all of that, right? Because so much thought was given to it. And I have offered all these things to everyone who I knew was having a child. But I think the only person who responded so openly to the opportunity to be sustainable and accept all that I was willing to send to her was Richa. So it's all credit to her. It's a choice she actively made.
Yeah.
And she keeps complimenting me, and I'm like, no, there's no compliment to be given here, because so many of the things that I used for Ayaan came to me from another mother.
Sure.
And her gifts for Ayaan were so timely, because usually कहते हैं ना कि 7वें महीने तक रुक जाओ before you buy anything. So I hadn't bought a pin. And a very dear friend had just had a baby girl like a year and a half ago, and she had all these wonderful things that she got. And my friend called me in my 5th month, and she said, she's decluttering her room and she wants to give away stuff, and it's really good quality stuff and good stuff. Can I send her stuff to you? आप उसमें से देख लो what you want to keep, what you want to give away. And I said, please send it. Rudrani, every single thing she sent me is what I could use for Ayaan, because he came in so early.
So that's just wonderful.
It was like a godsend.
meant to be.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And so that's what being sustainable is all about.
Yeah.
It's about actively choosing to reuse as much as you can, repurpose as much as you can, and share as much as you can. I know so many amazing women now on Instagram who are like sharing saris, who are sharing birthday gifts, who are like there's this lovely girl called Sonika Basin who runs, she leads a zero waste lifestyle, and they've created this group of women who are constantly exchanging saris.
Love it.
And enjoying it and celebrating it.
Yeah.
And her son's birthdays, they do it completely sustainably, and then they have like a gift swap where the children bring in pre-used gifts, gift wrapped.
Yeah.
So the children go back with a return present that some other kid has brought for them. It's almost like Secret Santa.
Of course.
So yeah, just ways to reduce consumption and make sharing cool again.
I love that. And you, Richa, a lot of other women have made that possible also. It's been a few years. It's been
3.5
since that conversation that we've had.
3.5 since he was born.
Yeah, and
since
then
our
I think
conversation.
a couple of years since that conversation. How do you look back at that time, and what have you learned through these years?
Rudrani, I shared our story of Ayaan's extremely premature birth and the medical complications that we dealt with, mine and his, because I just wanted that information to help more people and empower them.
You did.
The only thing that gave me strength when I was dealing with that situation was stories of women and children and parents who had made it through that time.
Yeah.
It's terrifying giving birth to a 820-gram baby who's like a fetus. And even more terrifying to be told that this child has to go through life-saving surgery not once but thrice. So, I said this before, and I always say this, I think in my heart I was so aware of how long it had taken for Ayaan to come to me. And how much I had prayed for him and wanted him and desired him, and that he would not leave me. That was the confidence. I just believed absolutely without question that he would not leave me. prayer really helped. And the stories that I read of women and children who'd suffered much worse and come out of it strong and healthy was what gave me the resilience. And now when I look back, I actually very recently, almost a month ago I think, for the first time cried copiously while I was talking about it, and it was the first time I really let it out. And I was like, I can't tell you how much relief I felt, because I think all those emotions that were trapped somewhere deep inside and suppressed because I had to be strong.
Yeah. It's a lot when they keep
and
saying
even
strong.
though I was crying, I'm sure I cried even through those hospitalizations and all of that. But I didn't ever allow myself to confront how terrifying it was. So I never consciously said, oh my God, this is so scary.
Yeah.
You know, and for the first time, I think a few months ago, I acknowledged how scary it was, cried copious tears, and felt such a wave of relief sweep through my body. And I was like, oh, I've let go of some baggage.
But it's such an inspiring
And
story.
he's such a Jaan.
Yeah, I've met him.
He's such a Jaan. He's
Most
love.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, so true. You know, before I come to my last segment, I must talk about how you've also navigated your personal life, right? Through her lens, I see a lot of women who find it difficult to restart just because they'll be like, oh, you're a divorcee, or how can you fall in love again? And you're at a certain age to do it again. But it's so important. Why should that be a norm and a conversation that someone wants to have in their life?
You know, Rudrani, I think it's such a personal thing, and it's such an individual thing. Of course, society should never be the reason why you choose not to have a partner.
Yeah.
It should never be the reason. But it's also personal because, I feel like I remember consciously thinking I never want to be married again. I remember freezing my eggs and wanting to kind of have a baby on my own, and wanting to, there was an idea in my mind about how I would want to go about life here on.
Yeah.
But none of that happened the way I had planned it or thought of it, because I met somebody who I felt safe with, and I could trust, and I could respect, and that changed everything. And that then gives you the courage or the audacity to make the choices that you need to. But it's different for different women, and it's again so much about where you're at mentally and physically, where you want to be, how you're able to respond to social pressure. There's so many incredible women who've, lost their husbands or been divorced early and have refused to remarry because they had children, and they wanted to focus all their energy on their the upbringing of their child with the support of their parents, or sometimes even not that. There are women who've left their marital homes with their daughters because there was extraordinary pressure to bear a son, and they were mistreated, and their daughters were being mistreated, and they've gotten up and left, and they've not been welcomed in their parental homes, and they've literally started life from scratch and built it up. So I think the question really is of, when will women start to believe they are enough, and whatever they want is meant to be theirs, and no one in this world has the right to question that.
So true. Absolutely.
And whether that's love, or that's companionship, or that's whatever that may be.
Yeah. No, 100%. Very beautifully put. I have to, of course, bring up, I know your mother is a huge inspiration for you. Most of our mothers are. But have you found strength and resilience, and also the person sitting in front of me, some of these very inspiring qualities, do you think has kind of been inculcated watching her journeys?
Of course, my mother's been through many vicissitudes, and she's got incredible strength of character, and she's really fallen and risen, and helped me understand the power in firstly acknowledging your vulnerability, secondly the power of I think forgiveness, and third the magic of living a life free of grudges.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah. So these three things I've definitely learned from her.
I love that. Well, we come to our last part. A few fun questions. We call it the Wonder Women Q&A.
Yay.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's go. How would you describe yourself today in comparison to the 20-year-old that you were?
More aware. I think when I was in my 20s, I was living. I wasn't as alive as I am right now.
Very nice way to put it. Okay. If you had to give a one-liner advice to that 20-year-old, what would you tell her today?
Don't worry, be happy.
It's simple but so important.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. 3 women from the industry that
I actually wrote myself a letter.
Oh, really?
It's on Instagram. If you ever have the time, read it.
I'm going to go and read it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
To my younger self.
I'm going to put out this as we
I'm going to
speak.
keep doing this every few years. I think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this letter out as we talk so that just others can also glimpse at it.
Very lovely.
But yeah, on that note, 3 women from the industry that you absolutely love and admire, can be from any era.
I don't think I've ever done an interview without taking her name, Shabana Azmi.
Of course.
She's just a remarkable woman, and I think it's her leadership and her strength and her character that has really shaped and defined our character, and so many of us look up to her, and she's so cool. She's the youngest of us all, and she's the coolest. She's my Ayaan's Nima, so
Beautiful.
she is everything I would aspire to be. She has taught me that cinema is a powerful tool to bring social change, to do social good. She has taught me how incredibly important it is to have a voice. And to be able to have a voice, one needs to have a very clear sense of your why, your purpose.
Beautiful.
There's Smita Patil, whose body of work inspired me when I was growing up. She was my mother's friend, and I will never forget the morning she passed on, and how my mother wept for her. And I think for me, growing up, she was like everything.
Yeah.
You know, and I watched all of her films over and over again and learned so much from her. What an extraordinary woman. And the third woman who really inspires me, and who I really look up to and love, is Vidya Balan. Just
Amazing.
her. Yeah, she's just amazing.
Okay. An on-screen character that you've done that you absolutely love and relate most to?
It's a hard choice between
Thappad.
Thappad and Dhak Dhak.
Dhak Dhak.
Because they're both completely different worlds and different women, but oh my God, how I aspire for their strength, you know, and their ability to just be so rooted in themselves. They're so amazing.
Yeah. Who does Diya Mirza think that she has best on-screen chemistry with?
Good question. I've never really thought about this. But I think I've got really nice chemistry with most of the people I've worked with.
True.
अच्छी लगते हैं हम लोग साथ में.
Yeah. I think everybody would say probably the usual.
Maddie. Yeah. Maddie, Saif.
Yeah.
I know there's a whole fan following for Rajiv.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just that there is for Maddie. The Sanjay Dutt. I've actually done a beautiful film with him back in the day. We released nahi hui, but it was quite special. But I feel like my best on-screen chemistry till date was with a little girl, a child called Dishita,
Yeah.
who I think made me feel like a mother even before my child who I
It's a good
birthed
one.
made me feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. A role you would have done differently today.
So many.
She's like,
So many. I would do Reena Malhotra very differently today. I'd keep her more real in terms of just the way she looked. I wouldn't wear the kind of clothes she's wearing in the film. I wouldn't wear any of that makeup. I wouldn't wear those colored lenses. I would actually keep Reena as real as Reena in the South Indian version was, if I had control over how I looked in that film.
Okay.
I think I'd perform it with a little more maturity.
Okay,
है
fair
ना?
enough. Fair enough.
मतलब थोड़ा बहुत ठीक ठाक ही था, लेकिन
Yeah.
अभी better होता, थोड़ा better
Because you
होता.
have grown so much as an actor also, Diya. Maybe that's why you
I
feel
don't know
that
if I've
way.
grown as an actor, but I definitely know that I've grown to understand myself better.
Yeah.
And I think that then lends itself to
Your career,
your
profession.
performances, yeah, your craft.
Of course. Okay, the last one, of course, to
Yes,
all the
ma'am.
women who are watching or around you, or if Diya had to tell them something today, you know, not just on Women's Day, probably every day that they need to remind themselves.
Oh my God, create a sisterhood.
Yes, please.
Hold each other tight. Support, celebrate, and worship each other. Because there is nothing more formidable than a group of incredible women.
Here,
है ना?
and she's among them. Always
I
a
have
cheerleader.
them, I have them on my corner, I have them in my side, I champion them, I celebrate them, I love them, and I am just so grateful for them.
100%.
Yeah. And we are also a little territorial. So,
I think female friendships.
no
are healing.
one can mess with us.
It's true. You're together, right?
Yeah.
I also feel like female friendships are healing.
Yes,
in some
they are.
ways. It's
Oh,
really-
yes.
oh,
I mean,
just
those
sitting-
unspoken hugs and those unspoken conversations and just being around each other is healing.
Absolutely. Now you know why she's our Wonder Woman. Thank you, Diya, for being a part of Wonder Women.
Thank you, Rudrani, for
And-
always offering me space.
Always.
Thank you.
And we'll always cheer for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you.